Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago, one of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose, as long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your hosts, Alex and Sean. On this episode, we have something that we rarely do, and that's host a Bears victory show. We'll also be talking a little bit of Bulls and Blackhawks and, maybe a little baseball, but mostly the Bears finally winning. But first, let's like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You get to see the stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. This season is currently going on, and if for all of you that missed out on giving Christmas gifts of cool Rockford Ice Hogs merchandise, you could still give some belated gifts. Just head on over to icehogs.com, get yourself a hat, shirt, jersey, tickets, and more. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. Alex, Merry Christmas.
And a Merry Christmas to you. I hope it was a good day. We had a good day on my end, nice and chill, nothing too fancy this year. And, as I was saying before the show, seemed like a common theme this year among many people, just kind of sticking around and chilling out.
Yeah, we had a nice, relaxing day. My mother-in-law, we played the movie Elf for her for the first time. She never saw it before.
Really? That was the first time she saw it, huh?
Yeah, it's almost 20 years old. And
I know, I remember seeing it as a little kid.
Yeah, it's crazy. Because I'm like, Zooey Deschanel in that movie is like 22 years old.
Yeah.
And I'm like, now she's like 40. Like, oh my God. So it's pretty amazing to think it's that old, because it's still, it's a classic. I think it's honestly probably replacing A Christmas Story as the quintessential Christmas movie.
Every Christmas, I try to rank my favorite Christmas movies, and I have a real tough time. But like, if I had to put a group together, I'd say Elf, It's a Wonderful Life, Christmas Story, Christmas Vacation, The Santa Claus. Those are probably a lot of my go-to, and Home Alone. I got to put in there, obviously.
I went to the Music Box Theater. So there's like a, who Svengoolie is, right?
Oh, of course. Rich Coase.
Yeah. So different cities used to have different horror movie hosts. So Svengoolie was the Chicago area one. Elvira was the LA one. They had different ones. There's a guy from Texas named Joe Bob Briggs, and he still hosts a show on Shudder, which is owned by AMC Plus. And he was in town to introduce and host a Christmas horror movie double feature, and that was last week. And went to that, and it was they played the Christmas horror movies of which is one classic and one newish one. So the classic was Silent Night, Deadly Night. And the other one was one I'd never seen before, called Santa's Sleigh, starring pro wrestler Goldberg as Santa, who was only nice because he lost a curling match with an angel and was forced to be to bring joy to people for 1,000 years. But when that 1,000 years was up, he was ready to wreak havoc on everybody. It was pretty out there. From the opening jump, it was just like this movie's ridiculous. Bill Goldberg as as Santa Claus doing roundhouse kicks on people.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, they're clearly not, you know, that high of a rank on the, the Mount Rushmore of Christmas movies, but it was still fun anyway.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard of that movie. But I'm kind of intrigued now that you mentioned that. So maybe I'll have to check that out sometime. I know Christmas is over, but hey, it's still the Christmas season to the new year, in my opinion. So maybe I didn't even know that existed. I'm sure there's a whole universe of just obscure Christmas movies that nobody knows about that are just waiting for more people to watch. Because like we all know the big Christmas movies. Everybody knows It's a Wonderful Life. Everybody knows Home Alone. Everybody knows A Christmas Story now that it was on TBS. Maybe not so much back in the day, but ever since they put it on cable, and it was kind of the same thing too with It's a Wonderful Life. When it came out, it was a major flop, but the cable networks made it such a classic, and now it's considered one of the classic all-time movies and historically significant. It's kind of funny. You can look at a lot of the Christmas movies and be like, hey, these became popular over time. Whereas movies like Elf and Home Alone were instant hits. It's kind of a little different among the top ones. But yeah, I don't think I've ever heard of that movie in particular. But there's probably a lot of weird Santa Claus themed stuff too. Like Santa Claus like being like a Rambo or something with like a machine gun. I'm sure that's out there in some form.
There's a new one that just came out last month, called 8-Bit Christmas. I don't know if you saw that one.
No, is that like literally like video game themed?
Yes, it's what stars Neil Patrick Harris, and it's and the story takes place in the 80s in Batavia, in suburbs of Chicago.
Batavia, Illinois?
Yeah,
Really?
and the story is it's a live action movie, but it's the story of when the Nintendo, the original NES system came out.
Mm-hmm.
How everybody in this small town of Batavia wanted to get it, and the all the struggle that went along with trying to get a Nintendo in the craziness of that year.
Was it like Turbo Man?
It's kind of, but it's pretty funny. It's a pretty funny movie. You should check it out. I think it's on HBO Max.
Yeah, especially if it was in Batavia. I go to Batavia fairly often. That's interesting.
Yeah, it was a pretty good one. It's Neil Patrick Harris stars in it. And he's the grown-up version of the kid. So it's like told as, now of him telling the story to his daughter. And then they flash back to, the 80s.
So it's like How I Met Your Mother. It involves Neil Patrick Harris and telling a story to the kids.
I've never seen that, so I don't know.
Well, for those of you who've seen it, you probably get the reference.
It's very, very Princess Bridey.
Okay, like Peter Falk reading to the kid.
Yeah, but it's funny. He's like, one part, he's like, if they plowed the snow, he's like, it was an 8-minute bicycle ride to my friend's house. And the daughter's like, it shows him like he's just the voices of narration, and he's riding his bike down the street, and his daughter's like, were you wearing a helmet? And he's like, it was the 80s. Of course, we all wore helmets, which is funny because when I was a kid, nobody wore a helmet. Like nobody had a helmet. So it shows him riding his bike, and then poof, a helmet appears.
Was this actually filmed in Batavia?
That I have no idea. But it was pretty funny. Yeah, it was pretty funny. It's called 8-Bit Christmas.
8-Bit Christmas. All right. Now, when you first mentioned 8-Bit Christmas and it was video game themed, I thought like it was literally like in 8-bit, like an 8-bit movie.
Oh no, yeah, because the Nintendo was an 8-bit system. So
right.
Yeah, it was just kind of an homage to that. I mean, because that's the Nintendo's the main part of it. But everybody's wearing Chicago Bears gear in it. it's pretty funny. It's like it's nice because it's another Chicago based Christmas movie like Home Alone.
Mm-hmm. And all the
Um,
John Hughes movies.
all the John Hughes movies. Um, and we've got some the 80s were a heyday of Chicago based movies. Uncle
Yeah, I
Buck,
mean,
Uncle Buck is right up there for me.
oh, I love Uncle Buck. Love Uncle Buck. I mean, one of the iconic lines is "Get in your mouse and get out of here."
Here's a quarter. I want you to go downtown and have a rat and all that thing off your face.
What suburb was that one filmed in again? Because John Hughes like picked the house or location in seemingly all ends of the Chicago suburban area. Because I believe Niles, my parents used to live by there, is where they had the Breakfast Club school.
No,
Used
that
to be a
was
school.
that's no, it's not Niles. It's north of that. Man, I'm trying to think.
But wasn't it called like Niles High School or something like that?
I don't remember what the name of the school was in the movie. Wasn't it New Trier High School?
Maybe that was it. I know it was called Shermer in the movie, but obviously that's fictional.
Um, oh, it's
And it was
Main North
Main North. Thank you. I don't know why I was thinking Niles.
in Des
I have no
Plaines.
idea. Okay, yeah. So not far.
Yeah, no, not far at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you think of the 80s too. Like you also have another John Hughes movie, Ferris Bueller,
Yep.
obviously in Chicago.
I think the Uncle Buck house is in Evanston.
Yeah, that sounds about right. The Planes, Trains, and Automobiles house, where the street kind of leads up to the front door. Oh, I was just reading about the house, but I can't remember what suburb it was in.
Kenilworth,
Kenilworth. Okay. Kenilworth.
which looks a lot like the Home Alone house.
It does. There was actually a point where I thought it was the same house. I'm like, oh no, it's a tad different.
My wife had never seen Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and we watched that because that's like a Thanksgiving movie.
Right.
And so we watched that on Thanksgiving. And I'm like, you know what? I haven't seen this in a few years. I'm like, that really looks like the Home Alone house. And but yeah, they're they're very close by each other. So you get that similar style, but
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the brick.
but it's a different house.
Yeah,
and
and
then,
I think
and then the Home Alone house is in Winnetka.
right. I've actually seen that. I've been by that. I've been by that house and that church where they're in that one scene where Kevin's with the old man, and then where he like hides by that nativity. I've seen that church before.
Yeah, I took my daughter was it last year or the year before? I can't remember. It was either no, it must have been, must have been last year. I took her to see the Home Alone house,
Mhm.
and she'd never seen the movie before. But I played her the movie, and then I was like, you know what, let's go see the house. So we drove up. She was like a pig in slop, because she was so into that movie. Like she made traps around the house.
Oh, that's funny.
So I walked into her room one morning to wake her up, and she had like little cars all by the door and almost broke my neck. She like, tied string across the doorway.
Did she tie paint cans to the ceiling?
And luckily,
Throw 'em at
no fire and no paint cans.
No BB guns, no fireworks.
No, but she like drew like a map of where she was going to put her booby traps.
Just like Kevin did, yes.
Yeah. We just watched the new Home Alone movie, Home Alone 4.
Oh, the one on Disney Plus.
Yeah, it was better than Home Alone 3. I'll give it that much.
Honestly, like I don't really watch the ones after the second one because I like this second one. I know people are mixed about the second one. I like the second one.
If you compare it to the first one, it's not that good. But if you look at it as a standalone movie, it's not bad.
I think Marv is really funny in that movie in the second one.
But I don't know if you saw the other day, the guy who played his brother Buzz
Yeah.
got arrested for domestic battery.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not a good look, Buzz.
No. That's a shame because I love Buzz in the
Yeah.
first movie. Oh, if you
Especially
want to eat cheese pizza, you're gonna have to barf it all up.
yeah. It's especially bad timing because Disney Plus put him in, he was in the new Home Alone movie.
Yeah, he made a
And
cameo, didn't he?
yeah, and he was like hosting, they put the Home Alone house on Airbnb for one night.
Yeah, I saw.
And that was a cluster because like they should, if it's only one family could stay there one night, like they should have done it as a lottery, because you logged on to try to get it and it was just like, nope, no slots available. And
Right.
that was it. Like they should have just done it as a lottery and given you everybody the opportunity to win.
I agree. That would have been a good way to do it. They should do that next year.
But yeah, Buzz was hosting that.
Yikes. Yikes.
But let's jump into this Bears game.
Okay, I got to ask you this question. Is it possible for me to still be really just tired of all the typical Bears nonsense and acknowledge the fact that the win didn't mean anything, and yet still say, hey, you know what? I actually kind of enjoyed watching that fourth quarter and watching them come back and win. That's acceptable, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, same boat. I mean, there's a lot of things I'm mad about. And even though they won, there were so many things to point out for reasons to fire Matt Nagy.
Plenty.
That this game was like the epitome of what's been wrong the last 4 years of the Matt Nagy, the entirety of the Matt Nagy era.
Yes.
It was just, this was the embodiment of it, except that they got the win at the end. So it was like, it was just like a knock. There was no gut punch at the end. You're like, okay, I could be happy that they won. I'm still going to point out all of the things why I think there needs to be an entire regime change.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we saw so many of the same problems in the red zone. We saw a lot more of just the undisciplined play. We saw a lot more of just the same old stuff. You try to make too much out of something you don't need to make too much of. Once again, we saw failed Wildcat again, as per tradition. I'm pretty sure if you put together the Wildcat yards, it would probably be like a net of -1 yard because they lost several yards on that one. I couldn't even tell you if they've ever even gained a yard. They
were in the red zone and they had back-to-back plays if they went from the Wildcat to an empty backfield in the red zone when you have David Montgomery. There was at the end of the game that they ended up scoring, but on 3rd and 1, you had a 3rd and 1 when you have to go for it. So it's a 4-down territory. You quarterback sneak it and you don't get it, but you end up going for it on 4th down. But you had two 3rd down and 4th down and 1 in the red zone and neither one of them did you have David Montgomery in the backfield.
And, David Montgomery, he was having his best success today when he was running right up the middle, because how many times did you see him try to, curl around the left or the right, especially to the right, and the blocking to the right was just really, really, really bad today. But when he was able to go up the middle, he was able to eat big chunks of yards. And, that's where he was really successful today. And you saw him get multiple touchdowns by just running it right up the gut. And that was what you really needed to do all day. I mean, the number one plan for the Bears should have been to just run the ball like crazy. You saw the conditions. You had Nick Foles starting his first action all season. I mean, it was key for Montgomery to get going, and he really needed to be involved in virtually every play, and he made a lot of plays today. I mean, he had a really nice game.
I mean, stats wise, it didn't look that good, but he
got it done when he needed to.
You had all the success when you were running the football, like drives that were run based were the ones that did well. And the thing that drives me crazy is it's a wet, sloppy field, and they still, David Montgomery rushed 21 times, Nick Foles threw 35 times. Like, if that just doesn't scream what is wrong with everything. Darnell Mooney had twice as many rushes as Damian Williams and the same amount as Khalil Herbert.
Why was he getting rushes? Why was Darnell Mooney getting rushes?
Why was Darnell Mooney the running back on a 3rd and 1?
That drove me nuts. That absolutely drove me nuts.
There's just so many things. It just why was Larry Borum benched in favor of Jermaine Ifedi?
Oh, that was brutal. Was brutal.
After a big performance in his debut, why was Thomas Graham benched in favor of Kendall Vildor and Artie Burns? Like, why why in the world is Matt Nagy benching guys that we're trying to evaluate, young guys that we're trying to evaluate, and playing them over, benching them in favor of veterans on expiring deals? And I was trying to convey that message on Twitter, and I had people that were just like, oh, well, Thomas Graham got burned for that touchdown. I'm like, I'm not saying that they're the answer. What I'm trying to say is that we're trying to figure out what we have in these young guys. So if Larry Borum's going to be terrible, I don't think he is, but let's say, all right, let's go with Thomas Graham. Is Thomas Graham good enough to be the number 2 opposite Jaylon Johnson? If he is, you'd like to have tape to figure that out. So otherwise, you're going to go out and sign a free agent cornerback or draft another cornerback fairly high. That's bad form. Artie Burns is not the answer. Kendall Vildor is not the answer. So why not give it to, the opportunity to the younger guys to figure out what it is you have in them. So I don't care. I don't care about the performance that we get. I mean, I do, but I would like to see them succeed, but I'm not saying, oh yeah, these guys are better. I'm saying, I don't know. I want to see as many snaps and reps as possible in games so that when it comes the end of the season and whoever is going to be the general manager for next season sits down and evaluates, they have more film to look at.
Right. And, going to that Thomas Graham play where he was burned on the touchdown, A, it was one play. B, he was all alone on an island. You can't expect perfection from a guy like that. It was one play. I'm not going to write him off because of one play. You look at all the other good that he's done in the past, how long he's played since last week, really good game last week, made some other plays later in this game. It was one play. I don't think that's reason for me to be like, oh, yep, forget it now. And again, to your point, I'm not going to say that he is the long-term answer, but I just think that one play is not enough for me to just damn him.
And plus, I have to go back and watch the all 22 of it, because I don't know, was he supposed to be on man coverage on him, or was he expecting safety help over the top? And that's why he was playing off of him like that. He was playing underneath coverage. I'm not sure. I'd have to see. I mean, it looks like from, the close-up view, it looked like he was playing man and just got beat.
Yeah.
But either way, is why in the world am I going to be butthurt about one play where a guy got beat by one of the better wide receivers in the league that's 6'4" and on a perfect throw.
Right. I wasn't going to rail too much on that. And, to Russell Wilson's credit, like you said, it was spot on. They had the play executed perfectly. And when you're all alone on an island and you're a young rookie trying to face one of the better targets in the NFL, that's a tall task. It really is a tall task. So, that's either way, he should have been in there from the start. And I would have played everybody you could to see if there's anything for the future. Now, of course, we do have to give some credit to some of these veterans that came up big in this game today. And I want to go quickly back to David Montgomery because, I mentioned the rushing. I mentioned the rushing up the middle. And yeah, like you said, the yards and the rush per attempt don't look very good. But look what he did receiving wise. 7 catches, 61 yards. There were a number of plays where Dave Montgomery, caught a nice little dump pass, little screen pass sometimes that actually worked out. Do you remember that screen pass they threw? It was 2nd and 11. It was about 8 minutes to go left in the third quarter. And they actually executed a screen pass. And Dave Montgomery was the receiver of that screen pass. And I was shocked. I said, wow, that's a successful screen pass by the Bears.
Yeah, they don't throw it very often.
No, they don't.
And honestly, I don't even think it was set up that well. If the Bears, if it wasn't for the element of surprise, because I don't think anybody honestly prepares to defend the screen pass when they play the Bears because they don't rarely expect it. Yeah. So I think that caught them more off guard than anything because it wasn't the most well executed.
But hey, it worked.
It worked. And but yeah, that was a big play.
And I mean, like I said, too, there were plenty of other plays where they were able to get the ball to Montgomery out in the middle of the field, and he was able to gain a lot of extra yards after the catch. And I mean, I got to give the Bears offense credit. Overall, it wasn't perfect. Don't get me wrong. There were a lot of things to tear your hair out, but in the second quarter, especially, they dinked and dunked fairly well. I'm not going to say it was great. I'm not going to say it was something that you would, show off to people, be like, oh, you want to know the perfect way to do it? Here it is. But in the second quarter, or the second half, I should say, I thought that the Bears dinked and dunked fairly efficiently.
They did okay. They between the 20-yard line and the 20-yard line, they moved the ball fairly well. It's once they get in the red zone, it's Matt Nagy's the flaws in Matt Nagy's system shine so bright and they're so pronounced.
When you have a wildcat and then you throw short of the end zone with 2 guys defending the receiver and you don't even make a play in the end zone. That's what makes it drive you crazy.
It's you look at successful offenses and they have natural picks and misdirection type things to get guys open. The Bears just don't do that. They expect guys to win one-on-one battles on their own in the red zone. And that's part of the reason is, the Jimmy Graham touchdown was because Jimmy Graham did an individual effort. It had nothing to do with the offensive scheme giving him space. It was that Jimmy Graham boxed out a smaller defender.
That was good execution by the players, honestly. That's what it came down to.
And that's what Matt Nagy's offense revolves around is individual success rather than the success of the offense.
And they don't make plays nearly often enough. They just don't.
Are you watching the Sunday Night Football game by chance?
No, I'm not.
I have it on and I've got to go back and look, but I think Dak Prescott has a sticker of Lando Calrissian on his helmet.
Oh, that's cool.
I hope he does. It flashed so quickly, and I got to see a close up. Because I got rid of cable, so I can't rewind it. I'm watch on streaming. But yeah, I'm like, he's got it flashed quickly. I'm like, is that Lando Calrissian? I really hope so, and I hope that if he gets fined, he doesn't care because he's like, I'll pay the fine to have Lando on my helmet.
Hello, what have we here?
But yeah, that's the problem, part and parcel with Matt Nagy's offenses. Just the fact that there's no scheming guys open. It's a ton of curl routes. They don't utilize screens enough. They don't utilize. Oh no, I think it's Roger Staubach with one of those open, like a coat over his uniform. Not Lando. Darn.
Oh, that's too bad.
And that's the problem is you watch, one of the touchdowns that the Tampa Bay scored, they schemed a guy wide open. In the Eagles game, they had the tight end where it looked like he was inline blocking, and they ran a boot the other direction, and he just sort of acted like he was blocking and fell off the block and then stood in the end zone. He was the only one on the screen. Like, there's just the scheme gets guys open to make easy touchdown passes. I'm watching the Cowboys Redskins game, Washington football team game, and just an easy dump off for a 5-yard touchdown pass, where the Bears make it look like it is just pulling teeth. Even when they score, it is, you're like, my God, like, why is this so difficult? The 2-point conversion, it took like an absolutely fantastic play and individual effort to come down with that catch.
That was a hell of a catch. Honestly, as miserable as this season has been, that was really just fun to see. That was a hell of a catch. And I know it wasn't executed like the way you'd want to, as smoothly, I should say, but damn, that ended up being a hell of a play, because when that play was unfolding, I'm like, oh, they're not going to get it. And then he was able to come up with it. And whew, I mean, that was, it was impressive. Like, honestly, that was an impressive play.
Yeah, it's, when he caught it, the way the angle of this TV screen, I'm like, oh man. I'm like,
I thought he was out of bounds for a second.
I'm like, he's out of bounds. And then when they called the touchdown, I'm like, all right, they're taking a long time to review this. I was like, it's probably bobbled it. And then they showed the replay, and I was like, well, he only got 1 foot in, but he got his knee down,
and he had more space than I thought in the back of the end zone compared to that original angle.
Yeah. And, what I learned from years of watching John Madden announce is 1 knee is worth 2 feet. So, saw that knee go down, and I'm like, all right. And he clearly did not bobble that ball at all. One hand grip. So that was a huge, I mean, I appreciate Nagy going for it, because a big part of me was like, that guy he's going to play it safe and kick it. And he didn't. It was like the one time he wasn't a coward. He's like, I'm going to go for it. What are they going to do? Fire me twice?
Yeah, no, I'm glad they went for it. I was even, because I was watching this game with my dad, I was even telling him, like, I think they might go for it if they get the touchdown here. And he's like, yeah, me too. And I said, even if they lose, I can at least appreciate the fact that they would go for 2 and go for the lead here with a little less than a minute to go, or it was maybe 1 minute to go exactly. I don't know. It was about a minute, but the fact that they went for the lead to try to get the win right there, I do appreciate that. I really do. And that was a situation where you kind of just had to. Yeah, you didn't want to kick the tie and then either try to stop him to go to overtime and then hope things go your way in overtime. Just going for it right then and there was nice. And, I'll say this too about that drive is that, there wasn't anything overly fancy about it outside the touchdown and 2-point conversion because those were both really nice plays. I mean, you ended up going backwards. You had Foles lose a fumble, which was recovered nicely. You ended up being 3rd and 14 when you threw that touchdown pass. So it wasn't the prettiest drive, but how many times did we see those types of drives end in turnover on downs or fumbles lost or interceptions this year? I mean, even if it wasn't pretty and it required some really nice play on the field to get that executed, it was just nice to see them come up clutch like that. It was fun to watch.
Did you know the Bears lead the NFL in most number of plays where they're 3rd and 19 yards plus?
I'm not surprised.
They had at least 2 more today.
Yeah, because you had some penalties, you had some sacks because the combination of Foles not being mobile at all and Jermaine Ifedi not being able to block efficiently set up a lot of that.
Yeah, and we started the game with Larry Borum on the bench for reasons, and Jermaine Ifedi starting at right tackle for reasons, and Tevin Jenkins started the game at left tackle. Jenkins left early in the game with some sort of shoulder injury that I don't know the severity of, but he did not come back that I saw, and they brought in Larry Borum to play left tackle, and he had a few moments of struggle, but I thought overall he did okay. Jermaine Ifedi's terrible.
Yeah, that right side was really giving up the pressure.
Yeah, he's terrible. And I'm worried that Ryan Pace is going to keep his job or keep some sort of job within this organization when, for no other reason, if you could just, as a counterpoint for any reason to keep Ryan Pace, you just say he started this season where they talked about playoff aspirations with cornerback number 2 is Kendall Vildor and starting right tackle as Jermaine Ifedi.
Mm-hmm.
That was your options. That's what you said. This is good enough to get us to the playoffs. And that should be enough to get Ryan Pace fired.
Yeah, and I have that weird gut feeling that even if they restructure and it's another title, I have that feeling that Pace isn't going anywhere. Again, I don't know, but I just have that feeling. I mean, as long as he's not the last, as long as the buck doesn't stop at him when it comes to football decisions, I'll be a little less weary of that. But if he fails up like Stan Bowman, then you got an issue on your hands. You really do.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. You have an issue. You have a big issue. We look at, I mean, Stan Bowman and Ryan Pace are very analogous front office people. And Stan before he got or stepped down or whatever you call it, he was promoted. He got a promotion.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at Ryan Pace and you're like, that might happen with him too. And with Stan, you look at the position he left the Blackhawks in, and we'll get to more of that later, but you're like, shit, he really handcuffed this team
for a
going
while.
for at least 2 years. And that's what I worry about Ryan Pace is, for some reason, George McCaskey thinks that, that there isn't consequences to making bad decisions on his part. And hopefully he realized from last season when he's like, well, I'm convinced that collaboration is the key, and these guys collaborate harder than anybody. And we saw what a disaster this season has been, that, that things have to change. And I keep hearing rumors that there's going to be major restructuring, and that either Ted could be gone, whether that's firing or retiring, or him being restructured to only business side, that there's going to be major overhaul with the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, I mean, those rumors are swirling. I mean, they've been swirling for a while now. I mean, obviously the Matt Nagy rumors were the strongest ones because there might have been some merit to it before it leaked. But, we've been hearing all these talks and rumblings about a restructure within the Chicago Bears organization. And, we only have 2 weeks left. We got 2 more games, 2 weeks left. And then, the day of reckoning is going to be here very, very soon. So it's going to be interesting to see what swirls around in the rumor sphere over the next 2 weeks, because we know these last 2 games don't mean anything. They're probably not going to mean anything for the teams they're playing. I mean, obviously they're not going to mean anything for the Giants. And I think the Vikings I think their ass is pretty much grass at this point. So that last game probably won't have any merit for them either. So, you're just trying to get through these last 2 games. So I'm sure there'll be plenty of rumors swirling around over these last 2 weeks. And I want to say this too. I've seen a lot of Bears fans say, and some people have even texted me saying, oh, is this win going to save Matt Nagy's job? This feels like a better version of the Lions win on Thanksgiving. At least this one was actually somewhat entertaining, unlike that game. But this, to me, still wasn't a job-saving effort. I mean, like you said before, that the game-winning touchdown and 2-point conversion, that was the players being better than the scheme. They executed perfectly, and they were able to get it done. We still talked about all the frustrating things about this game, whether it was bad play calling in the red zone or undisciplined play with penalties, whatever. It wasn't a coach-saving game. And I get the fears there, just knowing this organization. I really, really do. But I don't see this win as saying, oh, now we got to keep everybody here. Because remember this too, Seattle's not good either. They now have the same record as the Bears.
Yeah, and honestly, if George McCaskey has not made up his mind about what he's doing with Matt Nagy at this point, then he's a bigger dum-dum than I thought.
Don't you mean ding dong?
He'd be downgraded to dum dum.
You've been demoted from ding dong to dum dum.
Is if you have not made a decision on what you're doing, and I'm 99.9% sure that that they've made the decision, but they're just doing that boneheaded thing where it's tradition. We don't fire a coach mid-season. And they're just waiting to, waiting it out. But if they're still on the fence about it, or still close enough where they could be swayed by a single game performance, then honestly, the NFL commissioner should step in and take this team away from the McCaskey family.
Yeah. You ain't kidding. And there, you're in a position where you point to some of the nice things in this game, and you look at the fact that you squeaked out a win. You shouldn't have to justify a coaching scheme by having to point out some of the nice things, saying, oh, at least we had this. Because when you're saying, oh, at least we had this, that tells you don't have it very often and you're just looking at the bright side. That's not what we should be doing here. Earlier, I mentioned in the second half, I thought this team dinked and dunked pretty nicely. And I still hold by that. I think they did. But again, it wasn't a coach saving effort. It really wasn't. I mean, you also got to remember this too. This game probably could have been over had the Seahawks not missed the field goal, or had they not allowed Russell Wilson to get sacked. Another great performance by Robert Quinn, by the way. He got a few more sacks, but still, the Seahawks were a sack and a missed field goal away from winning this. And you know what? Props to the Bears for taking advantage of mistakes, because that's what you got to do to win. You got to take advantage of the opportunities that are given to you. But it's not like they went out and won 41-0. You dinked and dunked nicely in the second half. You got the win. You made some nice plays, but you could still look at the laundry list of things that are wrong. And these laundry lists of things that are wrong are the things that have been wrong the past 4 years. And it still happens way too frequently. When was the last time the Bears had a blowout win against the team that wasn't the Jaguars or the awful Texans last year? Feels like it's been a really long ass time.
What was the question?
When was the last time the Bears had a blowout win against a pretty worthy opponent? We saw them blow out the Jaguars last year. We saw them blow out the Texans last year. Both those teams were dog crap. I'm talking about facing a legitimate team and winning by at least 14 points, a blowout.
I'm gonna guess. Weren't the Vikings pretty good the other 2 seasons ago? The Bears beat them pretty well.
Yeah, the one with Chase Daniel at Soldier Field, the one we did the hot mic for.
Yeah,
because they ended up going to the playoffs. Because you look at the wins last year. I mentioned the ones against 2 awful teams. Okay, those were blowout wins against 2 awful teams, whatever. You needed a lot of comebacks and tight squeezes last year to get some wins. You had a really nice win against Tom Brady, but that wasn't a blowout. Obviously, you've been getting blown out by Green Bay. You haven't blown them out in a long time. I remember when they blew out the Cowboys in 2019.
that wasn't a blowout. That was a touchdown win.
Okay, it wasn't a blowout in the final score, but you got to remember a lot of those points from or at least a chunk of those points from the Cowboys were in complete garbage time.
It's true. I think they scored 14 in the fourth quarter. Or like that.
The game was already over. That to me,
but the Cowboys weren't very good. The Cowboys had a losing record that season.
No, they weren't. They weren't total schlubs, but you're right. They weren't.
They were
mediocre.
Team.
Yeah, they were mediocre. My whole point I'm trying to say is that the Bears, even when they've won, have had to eke it out. And you see truly good teams are able to put teams away early. And even some of the nice wins earlier in the season. You remember the Bengals game? That looked like a blowout. It ended up being a lot closer than it should have been. They almost gave that away.
They did.
You had a really nice win against Vegas. You put them away, but it wasn't a blowout. The Lions was a blowout, but that was the freaking Lions. And then the other Lions game, you needed the field goal to win 16-14. So then you have to go back to last year, and we talked about that before. I don't count that. I mean, the Jaguars were literally losing on purpose, and the Texans were a tire fire. It just, even in 2018, you had a few blowout wins against Tampa Bay, but they weren't good that year. I mean, I get a win's a win. I understand a win is a win, and it doesn't count more than a blowout or not. But when you're either losing or just eking out the few wins you do have, it tells you that consistently you're not competing. And this team on paper is not a Super Bowl team. fully healthy, it's not a Super Bowl team, but I've said before that this team has enough talent to be better than this. I truly believe that. If they were schemed properly, they could be better. Not great. And again, they are banged up. Khalil Mack's obviously out for the year, among others. But I feel like this team is too talented to be flirting with last place. And that's an indication on the coaching.
Absolutely.
And please don't get me wrong with the talented thing. I'm not saying this is a double-digit win team. But on paper, this should at least be a competitive one. And for the most part, it hasn't been.
I'm looking. Like they really have not blown out a decent team in a long time. I mean, they blew out the Bills in 2018, but the Bills were not good.
No.
They blew out the Buccaneers, and they were worse than the Bills. They blew out the Vikings that year. The Vikings were 8-7-1. This is wild. They just don't. How do you not blow out anybody or significantly beat somebody? Even that was a year that people thought they could go to the Super Bowl.
Well, remember that Rams game, that epic Rams win? That was
the win. I was about to say.
Yeah, the win. The win on, what was it, Sunday Night Football? That was all defense.
Oh, all defense. All defense and weather.
Yeah. That was one of the true times Bear weather, I think, actually had a positive effect for the Bears.
Bears weather is a fallacy.
It's done very little to help us over the years. Very little. You know what the ultimate meatball headline of today's game is? Dat Nick Foles should have been starting and win in Dat Bears weather.
That oh wait, here we go. Sorry. The Bears blew out the Carolina Panthers. And where the heck did that go?
Oh, is that 2017?
2017.
That was the game where Eddie Jackson had 2 pick sixes.
Yeah, and the Panthers were 11-5 that year.
Yeah, and didn't Trubisky only throw like 7 times that entire game?
You know what? I'm gonna say this. Or I'm gonna pose this question.
Okay.
I've got the stats here. Is Mitch Trubisky completed 4 of 7 for 107 yards.
Woo.
Would Justin Fields have been better off playing for John Fox than Matt Nagy?
Let me ask you this question. Would a snowball do better in an incinerator or a 500-degree oven?
I asked this because John Fox would have just run the ball a lot and minimized the number of throws that Justin Fields is making and probably had him run a lot. And I feel
that is a good point.
I'm not saying he would have been successful. I'm just saying would he have been better off? And I feel like he might have been, because John Fox would have shielded a Justin Fields, where Matt Nagy just threw him to the damn wolves.
You actually might have a point. You might have a point. I mean, Trubisky could run too, but obviously Fields is better. I don't think it would have been particularly great, but I get what you're saying. I do understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm not saying that he would have grown under John Fox. I'm just saying that he would not have been he would not have been bludgeoned.
We'll just run with Jordan Howard.
John Fox would have put in more max protects. John Fox would have done things old school and made Justin Fields be a game manager and utilized his legs and put max protects in and run the ball. And I think that would have been a good scenario for him. But Matt Nagy is unwilling and unable to do that.
Yeah, right. Yeah. To go back on some of the positives, because I do want to talk more positives because this is technically a Bears victory show. I have to hand it to one particular player who you and I think many others have been pretty critical of, and I think rightly so. But there was a player who I actually thought had a pretty nice game today. Do you have any idea who I'm talking about?
Yes, Cole Kmet.
Yes. Good. That's what I've been waiting for. The game that he had today, that's what we've been waiting for. He actually had yards after the catch.
He outran Bobby Wagner.
Yeah, and he didn't freaking drop the ball a million times.
Yeah, no, he broke tackles. He outran somebody. It was actually a nice game by him. And, I wonder, is this going to be the breakout for him or if this was a flash in the pan? I don't know. But what I do know is you isolate this to this game and he had a really nice game.
Yeah. And you know what? If this is the type of game he needs a breakout from, or that's going to take for him to break out, better late than ever, I guess, because this season doesn't mean anything, but maybe you build some momentum for next year. Maybe you build a little confidence. 4 catches on 5 targets, 49 yards. I mean, that had to be far and away the best game he's had as a Bear, I think. At least this year, for sure.
I would
absolutely
say so.
This year.
Yeah, I would say so. You got to hand it to the defense too. They're playing with a guy that was on the street as a pass rusher in Irvin, and who also double revenge game. Jimmy Graham catches a touchdown, and Bruce Irvin gets the pressure on the last play of the game to seal the victory. But the defense played pretty well. Other than, there was a long run that happened that set up a touchdown, which there was a hold on that got missed. So that shouldn't even been a play. And the 41-yard touchdown pass to DK Metcalf. But that DK Metcalf had a 41-yard catch for a touchdown and finished the game with 41 yards receiving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'll say this about the defense. They did step up pretty big when it was late because, as I said earlier, when I mentioned, you remember the missed field goal, they were a lot closer before that sack by Robert Quinn, and that pushed them back a little bit. And, it was the type of game that Seattle isn't used to seeing. They're not used to seeing a ton of snow on the ground. So kicking field goals wasn't exactly a gimme there in Seattle. So the fact that they pushed him back and put more pressure on the kicker made a really big difference because he ended up missing that kick because they were in pretty good spot to at least kick a field goal, but moving them back made it a lot harder, and it ended up working for the Bears. So that was obviously a big play. And then, when they took the lead, Seattle still had about a minute left to drive down into field goal range to win the game because the Bears were only up by 1, and they were able to clamp down and stop them from even getting to midfield.
Yeah, they when it came down to it, they shut for the most part, they shut the Seahawks offense down the second half. They scored 7 points in the entire second half and none in the fourth quarter. That allowed the Bears to have that chance. And you're right. I was fairly convinced that even though the Bears got that 2-point conversion, that it was, and I bet Matt Nagy was even thinking that, like, what's the big deal if we go for the 2 or not? It's might as well go for it because A, I can't get fired because I'm already going to get fired. And B is if I miss it, if I kick the extra point, they're going to march down the field and kick a field goal anyway. So I might as well go for the lead in case they miss that field goal, we get the win. Or or put the pressure on them that they're not just playing for a tie. They have to go for the win. But it was I think everybody was a little surprised, but the Bears defense didn't even let them get close to getting in field goal range.
No, not at all. And you kind of had that feeling that for them to get into field goal range, even probably would have had to drive pretty deep, because with that last miss, I mean, I don't know exactly what the confidence of the kicker was, but with that last miss and with the weather, you could have eaten a few big chunk plays and easily at least gotten in a normal field goal range. It might have been a little closer. You might have needed to get a little closer than normal, but still, you didn't even give them that chance. I mean, that's the nice thing, because once you get past midfield and say you got 20 seconds left, that's plenty of time to eat more chunk plays, but they didn't. And, Seahawks kind of shot themselves in the foot too with a holding call. And they had another holding call when the Bears had a holding call. So that would obviously end up being a wash. And that last play that sealed the deal, no one was even close to that throw that Russell Wilson had. So what we've seen many times end up being a way too easy march down the field after taking the lead really didn't go anywhere. And Russell Wilson has driven down the field and won games so many times in his career. You're not playing some random guy. Russell Wilson's one of the best at doing it.
But based on the field conditions and the wind, I would have guessed that they would have to have gone down, to be realistic, to the 27-yard line, because that would have made it a 45-yard kick.
You're probably right. And like I said, they're not used to kicking in that kind of weather at home.
That snow in Seattle was not normal, and the wind was strong because that missed field goal, like, that was going straight down the middle, and then it just it looked like it caught a gust of wind.
Yep. Yeah. Absolutely. And I don't know if you thought this too, but I thought for a second that the Seahawks were going to get a fresh set of downs when that late flag came in.
Oh, I was sure. And when that taunting call, like, I was like, is that going to be because it was a post whistle penalty? Did they just take the yards away from the Bears, or are they going to give them a first down? But another taunting call, and I can't, hard to argue because they didn't show it, but I don't know what the heck he did. But there was an unsportsmanlike conduct call where on the Bears, where it just looked like the guy said something like, and the Seahawks player shoved the Bears player afterwards, and then they like, oh, it was on Ogletree. And then Ogletree did the acting job and fell down, like he got shoved to the ground. And I'm like, oh, he got us a call. And they called it on Ogletree. And I'm like, what the heck? Like, what could he have said? He didn't have his hands up. He wasn't in an aggressive manner. He just said something, and then they call that unsportsmanlike.
It's like Arrested Development. Have you watched Arrested Development?
Yep.
It's like when the Franklin puppet is just sitting in the car and the police have him surrounded. He's being aggressive.
It's just like the refs have it out for the Bears.
You know what else is funny too? Is for a very split second, if you rewatch the Jimmy Graham touchdown, a bunch of snowballs come falling down. And for a very split second, my mind just went to, oh, there's a flag. Oh, wait, no, that's a snowball.
I don't know what made me just think of this, but I don't know if you saw a couple weeks ago, Taylor Heineke, the quarterback for the Washington football team.
Mm-hmm.
He was walking off the field with an official, and he reaches down and picks up a pair of scissors that are laying in the field and just hands them to the official. There was a pair of scissors on the field in the grass.
Wow. I wonder if that was from like the sideline that cuts off like tape or something.
I don't know. It was like in the middle. I mean, maybe that's where it originated, but it was in the middle of the field. Like there's a video of it, of him bending over and just picking up a pair of scissors, which is just totally fits with the last 2 years of the Washington football team.
Yeah, really.
The only thing that's going to make that saga any better is when they finally do announce their team name, that they won't have, it'll be another Cleveland situation where they don't have the website for it. It belongs to somebody else.
Yeah, right. Oh, we're going to name our team the Washington Googles. Wait a minute. That's already taken?
Google.com is not available.
What? Okay, fine. We'll go with our second. We are the Yahoos.
We're going to be the Washington Bullets. Oh, wait, that was a team and they decided to change it. Let's call ourselves the Wizards then. The Washington Wizards. That's an existing team. Nonsense.
Fine, the Senators.
They're gonna pick something dumb.
I know, right? The UFOs.
The Washington Schneiders.
Oh God. I'm pretty sure that would get vetoed.
Who has to approve it besides the team? The Washington Dan Snyders.
I think people would revolt if that happened.
You take off the Redskin logo and put his face on there.
How about the Washington Buttercups?
The Washington Crockpots.
Every time they score a touchdown or kick a field goal, it just plays over the loudspeaker.
That team is such a joke. The Bears are a joke, but the Washington football team is a joke too.
Yeah. So are the Seahawks.
Yeah.
I mean, you remember on that final drive for the Seahawks, they had 4th and 1, and then they got a false start.
Yeah, that was a total Bears move.
That made a big difference too, because there's a huge difference between 4th and 1 and 4th and 6, because 4th and 1, they could have run the ball or done like a QB sneak to get the first down. When it was 4th and 6, they were basically forced to throw the ball.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the Bears struggle with stopping 4th and 1 between quarterback sneaks and running backs. But when you go back to 4th and 6, that almost ensures that it's going to be a passing down and changes the number of plays that you can actually run. It really limits your playbook.
Right, exactly. I mean, that was really big. And, like I said, combination of the Bears doing some things in Seattle, shooting themselves in the foot. It was nice not to be the team shooting ourselves in the foot, especially after last week when they literally lost because they shot themselves in the foot. And the Vikings pretty much proved they are who we all think they are this week against the Rams.
But I've got a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Has Sean Desai done enough if you're the new head coach of the Bears to warrant keeping?
Okay, here's my thought. Keeping Sean Desai is something I wouldn't mind. However, if the new coach that comes in decides that he finds someone as a better fit, so be it. I'm not going to lobby for getting rid of Sean Desai because I feel like he's done a good job, with his defensive line getting pressure at the quarterback and having those guys in the right place. And
asterisk considering. Considering the defensive players he was given.
Well, that's the thing. The secondary, it's hard to blame him for
literally
that.
Today, your cornerbacks were Thomas Graham Jr. playing in his second NFL game, Kendall Vildor, who's terrible, Artie Burns, who's terrible, and Duke Shelley, who's terrible.
Yeah, I mean, that's on Ryan Pace. That's not on Sean Desai.
Khalil Mack is out for the season. And so half of your starting inside linebackers are out. So like Ogletree is a replacement. So you have Bilal Nichols is out, Akeem Hicks is out, Khalil Mack is out. You're playing with the opposite of Robert Quinn is a guy that you picked up off the street a couple weeks ago. So that's why I think he's actually done a decent job.
Yeah, no, I see Sean Desai getting a lot of grief, and I that's one thing I just don't agree with. I think that you can look at a good example of last week against the Vikings, how you have a bunch of guys having to come and play secondary, and it was schemed and played pretty well. The Bears' lack of offensive execution is why they lost. Defensively, the Bears played perfectly well enough to win that game. And, Thomas Graham was playing in his first ever game, and Eddie Jackson was out, and all your other regulars were out. So, again, the struggles in the secondary, I blame that more on Ryan Pace than I do Sean Desai. I think if you give Sean Desai some better personnel, then he could make himself a pretty good defensive coordinator. I think he's fine. I'm not going to tell you that the Bears have to keep him. If the new coach comes in and has a guy he feels is the better guy for the job, so be it. Fine. But if he does decide to go with Sean Desai, as of right now, I'm not going to protest.
I'm probably in a similar situation. Is usually a new coach will keep like at least one or two guys from the previous staff just to have some sort of continuity in the coaching staff. But usually it's lower level guys, but if you're bringing in, and it depends on who you bring in. If you bring in a young head coach, who doesn't have a ton of experience in the league, give them the opportunity. Maybe they do keep a Sean Desai because they haven't built up that network of people. Like when you bring in a guy with a lot of experience, they've got a network of people that they're like, you know what, these are the people I know and trust, and these are the people that I would want on my staff. And it's a lot harder to convince them to take somebody outside of that trust zone. But younger guys, they're much more willing to take on somebody else because they just don't have that network. So it depends on who you bring in. But like you said, I'm not gonna lose sleep over whether Sean Desai gets to keep his job or not.
My big concerns of the defense are getting Khalil Mack back to 100% and seeing how the new or whoever is in charge of football operations going into next year fixes the secondary.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if you bring Khalil Mack back, or you get him healthy, Robert Quinn, healthy rest of your line, and bring in another cornerback opposite of Jaylon Johnson, the defense should be okay. On offense, if you get Borum and Jenkins healthy and get them a whole training camp and preseason games to play, you're like, okay, and you replace the center, upgraded center, and you add a legit number one wide receiver and somebody that's not a complete nincompoop calling plays. I don't think the Bears are that far off. Obviously, they've got depth. I mean, far off from actually being a team that vies for a division title, not a Super Bowl title, because they lack too much depth. But from being a competent team, I don't think they're that far off. That's why I think that the job of the Bears head coach and general manager is probably a desirable one, and it's established by the fact that you have your quarterback of the future.
Well, that's the point I tried to make earlier. I said that this team, talent-wise, might not be great, but it should be better than what we've seen. And a lot of this has to do with the failure of the coaching and the scheme and how they try to make things work that clearly don't. I mean, think about it. If you use David Montgomery more to his strengths, more consistently, instead of just abandoning the run the second you go down 3 points early in a game, then you could probably see some better results. If you saw more efficient play calling in the red zone, you would probably see better results. Yes, you don't have the personnel to be a Kansas City or a Dallas or a Green Bay offense, but you could definitely be at least better than what you are with a better scheme and a better philosophy with the players you do have now. Obviously, rookie quarterback mistakes are rookie quarterback mistakes. That's part of it. And nothing would ever be perfect. But you could be so much better balanced and so much more efficient at so many things if there was consistently better scheming with this group. You were never going to have a great secondary. We'll make that clear. You were never going to have a great offensive line. You're never going to have the best wide receiver depth. But, you could have much more consistently efficient play with what you have with a better scheme. And, maybe it's a good thing in the long run that things are really failing now, because you don't want to be stuck right in the middle like you have in the past few years. And honestly, 8-8 is pretty much where they deserved to be last year and the year before. 8-8 is not a bad team, but it's not nearly good enough. You were stuck right in the middle. It's competitive, but it's not good enough. This team has the talent to be competitive, I do believe. If you give them some of the right personnel on the coaching staff and you fix some of the holes, then yeah, you can be looking at a more complete team in the future if done right. It's not like they're the pre-Trevor Lawrence Jaguars, or so many of those Jets teams.
And I heard somebody recently say that you don't want to pick a head coach to fix a problem that you currently have. Like, you're not going to hire them as a problem fix, that you should be hiring a head coach based on who can lead your football team. And that really struck a chord with me, because that's all we've ever done is, the defense needs fixing. Let's hire a defensive minded coach.
Mm-hmm.
Or the offense needs fixing. Let's hire an offensive minded coach.
Right.
When we should be looking at somebody that's genuinely just a leader of men. And I think, and I hope that they actually do that, and that ends up fixing the problems by changing the mentality of the team itself.
Yeah, I mean, even when Matt Nagy came in, he said, I'm going to come in and change the culture. I'm going to come in and, be the offensive-minded guy. And it's all stuff we wanted to hear and we've been longing to hear. And, if you do it efficiently, obviously that's what you want to see. But, yeah, it's interesting that you say that. You could maybe argue that you want the next coach to just kind of disregard the past and say, you know what, I'm just here to win.
Not to interrupt here and go on a tangent, but I'm watching, as we're talking, I've got the Cowboys Washington game on in the background, and two Washington players just got into a fist fight on the sideline.
Oh, that's neat.
The one walked up to the other one, screamed at him, put his finger in the guy's face and pushed his face with his finger, and the guy got up throwing punches.
Oh, is it like a Mo Howard?
Yes. And the other guy just was not having that and punched him right in the face. And so
it's bad in any sport when your own teammates start fighting.
Yeah, that's when you're not having a rough night. And right now there's 10 minutes left in the second quarter, and Dallas is up 28-7.
Do you think Dallas is legit this year?
If they're healthy, yes. They are a complete when they're out without Dak, obviously they're bad. Without Zeke, they're bad. Without those two wide receivers, they're bad. They need if they keep those guys healthy, I think they are legit.
You know what I kind of want to see, not going to lie, even though I'm really not a fan of his. I'd
Mike
love
McCarthy beat the
I
Green Bay Packers.
yes, go to Lambeau Field, Mike McCarthy win, and he just struts around with that smug, arrogant, jackass look on his face, just looking around at Lambeau Field and looking at Aaron Rodgers. I think that'd be hilarious.
That would be totally hilarious. But going back to the Bears I want to, for the next couple weeks, throw names out there of not the usual names that we throw out.
Okay.
I've been high on the Byron Leftwich train.
Me too.
But I'm going to throw a name that we all remember, or we should remember, because he was with the Bears for a number of years, and he helped make Devin Hester into the greatest return man ever. Former Bears special teams coordinator, Dave Toub.
I've heard Dave Toub thrown around too, and I don't know if he's my number one choice. I don't know how that'd work, but it's an interesting thought, I guess.
I'm not saying he's my number one choice. I'm just saying I'm going to introduce some names that probably have not been talked about in this cycle. Dave Toub is a guy that has been the bridesmaid as far as head coach opportunities a number of times. I think he's interviewed like 4 or 5 times. Like he's interviewed with 4 or 5 different teams for the head coaching opportunity. Hasn't gotten it. And he's been a successful coordinator for a long time. He's highly regarded. He's been in the NFL a long time. He's not young, but he's not old. But the guy has clearly a strong network where he could bring in a good staff. He's been around the league for a long time. He's 59. So he's not old, but he's not young. If he was from a different era, I think he would have been a head coach by this point. But we've gone through eras where people were looking to hire defensive coordinators as the hot thing. Then it was hiring young offensive minds and pairing them with an older defensive coordinator, which is what they tried to do with Matt Nagy. It's what they did with the Rams. It's what they did with Buffalo. But Dave Toub he's been that, well, I'm a good special teams coordinator, but I'm a leader of men. And I think he just kind of got stuck in the wrong era. But, there's been a history of very good head coaches who were special teams coordinators. Mike Ditka, John Harbaugh. I believe Bill Belichick started off as a special teams coordinator before he became a defensive coordinator.
Way back when.
Just saying not saying he's the answer. I'm just saying is that he's a name that we should at least consider. He should be on the table when you have your discussions of guys, because he knows this organization. He has a tie to this organization. And I think a huge thing that the Bears need to do going forward is have better ties with former players. And I think Dave Toub hiring him as the head coach would definitely do that, because the era of Bears that are currently the most vocal are the era where he coached. The Jay Cutlers, the Olin
Olin
Kreutzes,
Kreutz,
you know,
Matt Forte.
like those. That's his era. Is they would not shit all over him because they have ties with him. I mean, they might at some point, but he would have the benefit of the doubt. And I think there's reasons where it would be good. Obviously, you would strengthen your special teams, and I think his network of coordinators would probably be top notch. And I think one thing that we've seen is in successful teams having successful coordinators on your side. And I think having young head coaches with experienced coordinators or assistant coaches is not always easy to pull off. But Dave Toub has been around long enough where you could, he could bring in those experienced coaches, and he might even bring some ex-head coaches onto his staff that as coordinators and assistant coaches. And it's always nice to have, like you see that with Washington. I mean, not that they're a good example because that's a dysfunctional team, but Riverboat Ron has a staff with a lot of experience on it because he's been around a long time and has built those relationships. And I think, that sometimes builds a successful staff.
All right, I mean that's fair.
I mean, but it is the Bears, so they're probably going to go, well, our offense stinks. Let's hire an offensive guy.
Yeah, probably. Or they'll hire Ditka back. I'm going to say this, though. Just, I've heard this name, not frequently, not recently, but in years past, and I don't want to hear it. I really don't want to hear Pat Fitzgerald. Just no.
No.
Please no.
Yeah, if they hire Pat Fitzgerald, then I swear I might stop being a Bears fan because that would be a terrible decision.
It's literally what I said.
He's not an NFL coach, and
No.
I'm not saying there's anything wrong with him, but he should just stay at Northwestern. He makes really good money. He's very comfortable.
Pretty much got immunity there.
If he wants to make a jump, he could go to a bigger college. He could go to but why in the world would you leave a pretty sweet position like that where you could coach there for life?
Yeah, exactly.
But where should we move on to now?
Well, we got the Bulls playing right now. Once again, shorthanded. I thought Lonzo Ball was going to survive the COVID protocol, but I guess not. And we are now at a point where Ersan Ilyasova is suiting up for the Bulls.
The COVID situation is completely ridiculous at this point.
It's bonkers.
Billy Donovan's in the protocol.
That's right. I forgot about that. Jeez. Yep. When have the Bulls last played at full strength? It's been like over a month now, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous where they're at. But honestly, Lonzo Ball was huge while they had so many people in the protocol. But Zach is back. Kobe White is back. They're almost at where they're getting there with getting back to full strength. But
It's like a trade-off. When one guy comes back, another guy goes.
Yeah, but now you've got Vooch is back, Levine is back, DeRozan's back, Green is back, White is back, DeSumo's back. And tonight you're playing the Pacers and dominating them pretty good. Zach is back with a strong game so far, 18 points going into in the middle of the third quarter. And this Bulls team is a good team.
Well, I'll say this. They've won some really impressive games while shorthanded. It's not like they've just been being schlubs. I mean, we've talked about it on virtually every show, but they continue to grind out wins and take big games against worthy opponents, shorthanded. And when the big guy has to step up, they step up, whether that's DeMar DeRozan, whether it's Zach LaVine, whether it's been Lonzo Ball. Everyone's been basically given the opportunity to step up, and they have. And you know what? Here's the other thing, too, is we're not the only ones dealing with this. The COVID is running rampant everywhere. All teams around the NBA have key guys out with COVID or other injuries. Not everybody is playing at 100% either.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was an isolated handful of teams at first, and then now it's getting to the point where everybody's impacted. Some more than others, but the Bulls almost, it's beneficial. They were able to make it through, and now it's run its course through the team, and that they can hopefully maintain for the rest of the way without having this impact them anymore.
That's your big hope. You want everyone healthy at the same time when it matters most, especially.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the big Achilles heel of the Bulls, is they're thin. They're thin at multiple spots that in the playoffs, in the crunch moments, they have to rely on strong play from the starters. Otherwise this team is not going to go far. But if you can get them healthy, they can make some real noise.
Yeah, absolutely. And, now is the time for a lot of these guys signing these contracts to step up and play. And we've seen, you can't expect a lot. You can't expect a lot from these guys, but who's the guy that they signed and then they signed for the rest of the year? He's been playing pretty well. I'm totally blanking on his name. He can shoot the three. This is bugging me. I got to look it up. All I could say is I'm glad Ersan Ilyasova's around. Milwaukee Bucks legend.
But it's funny. The makeup of this team is what really is cool to me. It's a lot of guys that it's almost like they put together, I don't want to say a ragtag team, because it's clearly not, but it's a lot of guys who people sort of pigeonholed. Like Javonte Green is an athletic guy. DeMar DeRozan, this is all he can do. And Zach, this is all he can do. He can score, but he can't be the face of a team that goes anywhere. Just a bunch of Ayo is a G League guy or a D League guy, or whatever they're calling it now. He's not a NBA level player. And you put these guys together, and the chemistry that they have is legit, and they play together really well, and everybody they're an actual cohesive team, which is huge. And that's the part that scares me about going into this trade deadline, because, the Bulls could be primed to add pieces to help them in the long or, in the short run for this season. But, my concern is that because this team is built so much on good chemistry, are they going to throw that chemistry off by making a trade?
I mean, I get the concern, but I feel like you're just going to have to, because there are chinks in the armor and you do have a size issue. You're going to have to make some sort of roster adjustment there, especially if Kobe White continues to struggle like the way he has. He had a nice game the other night, but you're still kind of looking for that consistency. And by the way, quick tangent, really quick. It was Alfonso McKinney I was thinking of.
Okay.
Yeah. Just shout out to him. But anyway, yeah, I mean, my concern is if they are going to make a trade, what assets do you have to trade? You don't have many draft picks coming up. How are you going to acquire guys? I mean, you're probably going to have to put somebody maybe in a package like a Kobe White, but does he really have the value right now?
You'll probably end up with doing a multi-team trade to make things work out. And I don't know, honestly, like if you're able to get a frontline guy or if you're just going to get some size to be a rotational piece. That's the question. But I think size would be important.
I think so too, because that's really one of your biggest weaknesses.
I haven't even sat down. I mean, the trade room or the trade deadline's not for another 5 weeks or so.
Yeah, it's going to be a while, but these are things you start thinking about.
Oh, absolutely. And it's you start looking at the packages that they could put together and to add pieces. And I kind of want to start looking at who's out, who might be willing to be sellers. And in order for the Bulls to kind of improve.
Right.
And don't forget that they're going to get Patrick Williams back at some point. That's almost like a trade in itself, because
Big Dave is counting down the days to that.
I mean, I'm excited for that too. I think he's important. His defense, his energy, his size. The fact that he went down in such an awkward manner was a huge blow to the Bulls. Not so much for their, they've played very well without him, but for the long-term success of the Bulls this season, as far as the playoffs, I think they need him.
Yeah, for sure.
I haven't looked at it in a while of where he is at, because the reports were that on the early end of him coming back, he could be back around All-Star break.
That would be great. Because weren't the initial reports that he was out for the year, and then things have kind of changed?
They said like 3 to 6 months, I think. So on the early end, or maybe it was 4 to 6 months, and the early end would put him back, right at the All-Star break. Trying to see if there's any updates. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything, which is not surprising. The fact that a guy that's still a month and a half at the earliest coming back, that they're talking about status.
Right.
Um, duh, 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 duh. Um,
I don't think you're going to find anything.
yeah, I'm not at all, but I am seeing that the NBC Chicago is saying that the Bulls could push to make a trade for with the Pacers to get either Miles Turner or Domantas Sabonis. Sabonis would be huge. He's two-time All-Star.
That would be huge. Would they
I
trade in division like that?
I don't know. I mean, I think you'd have to pay a tax on that.
Yeah.
I mean, you could move Patrick Williams, Kobe White, obviously. You've got some expiring contracts with Derek Jones and Troy Brown. You've got the first round pick from Portland that you could part with. And, it's not like you have nothing, but it's not like you're swimming in draft picks.
No, quite the opposite.
Yeah, so I want to start digging in more to see what kind of options that they could get, but I think they do need to add some size. Especially a defensive big man would be nice. We are seeing Nikola Vucevic start to step up more. Offensively, not everything that he has been in the past, but he's been much more important playing as a rebounder and a defensive player in the middle, which has been nice to see. He's sort of shaping his game to fit what the Bulls need rather than forcing the Bulls to adjust their scheme to fit who he is.
Mm-hmm.
So I've liked the play that I've seen from Vucevic, in the last few months.
Yeah, it's definitely been better after that really awful start. And, one of the big important things you want to see from him is getting those rebounds, and he's done a pretty good job of that.
Yeah, I mean, they're just starting the fourth already, and he's got 11 rebounds in this game alone.
Yeah, there you go.
And man, Indiana's clawing their way back into this game.
Yeah, I know. I'm a little worried about this one.
Yeah, I should switch this one on. But yeah, so there's not been much to talk about this week because you've had postponements. So, you haven't had a game in a week. So this is your first game really back. And you get Zach LaVine back, who was out in the COVID protocol until a couple of days ago. So it's nice to have him back.
Mm-hmm.
And immediately comes in and drops 20 in the first three quarters.
What's been nice is that these guys that's coming back, DeRozan, LaVine, they've made immediate impacts coming back, not showing much signs of rust. They came back and got right back to business. DeMar DeRozan was saying how he kept active at home while he was quarantined.
Well, the nice thing,
good to see.
The nice thing is I don't know if any of them have had major symptoms. So it's not like they're laying in bed, sick or in a hospital bed or something.
Yeah, but still, if you're out of the game for a little bit, you might have a little rust to shake off.
Oh, absolutely.
You're not doing your normal routine.
What I'm saying is, it's nice that they at least could have, while they were isolated, stayed active and stayed,
sure,
running and lifting and shooting around. just away from your team.
Absolutely.
It's you look at guys when they come back from an injury, even if it's a mild one, yeah, especially a lower body injury where, or an injury where you can't physically be active. So I would say, like, if you're symptomatic COVID where you're laying in bed recovering, you start getting, you got to re-up that cardio, and you start getting winded.
Mhm.
And in basketball, if you don't get those legs under you, you start getting a flat jump shot on you. So yeah, that's the one positive, is because of this was a protocol, and not that these guys were actually sick, that, it was almost like a rest and rejuvenation period for them.
Yeah, exactly.
Just has them come back being healthier and hungrier. And you got a nice string of games here. I think you got the Atlanta tomorrow, I believe.
When are they going to make up those postponed games, I wonder? Because they've had 2 postponed games against the Raptors.
Yeah, I don't know when they do those. I have no idea.
At least with hockey, they know they're not going to the Olympics, so you kind of have that time to make it up. But with this, you're gonna have to find time to make these games up.
Yeah, absolutely. It's and I don't know if they're going to do a thing where they only make them up if they need to, like if it comes down to a seeding consideration, or who makes the playoffs. Baseball has done that, where they haven't rescheduled a game if it doesn't impact anything.
Yeah, we saw that in the COVID season last year in 2020 with the Cardinals.
And that might be another case where, oh, you know what, it's a team that's, no matter what, if they win or lose, they're going to be the 4th seed, and the other team, no matter if they win or lose, are going to be out of the playoffs. Do we bother rescheduling this? We'll sort of see that.
Right.
But I imagine with TV money, they're probably going to want to get these in at some point. Yeah, the next 2 games are back, home and away, back to back with Atlanta, which should be fun, because I remember the beginning of last season, I said that, this game later in the season or next year is going to be a much different game than it is now. And it was absolutely a different game at the end of last season, where you saw Atlanta play much better. And, this season, it's a lot different, because the Bulls are a really good team.
Yeah, exactly.
The Atlanta's record not so hot right now, but I still think they're
You can't take them for granted. You can't take them lightly.
They're a team that's on the cusp of making the playoffs, if the playoffs were to start today. But they are on the outside looking in. Right now they sit at 15-17, which is not a terrible record, but it does leave
You
them.
expected more from them, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Whereas the Bulls are sitting there at the 2nd best record in the Eastern Conference.
Who's got the best? Is it the Nets?
The Nets, yeah, which is crazy to think that, even without their entire big 3, they're still playing that well.
And the Bulls have beaten them multiple times.
They have. I think, honestly, I keep saying this, that the Bulls are a matchup-based team. And I think, it's going to, how far they go is going to just sort of depend on the matchup that they have come playoffs. There's some teams where I think they're going to struggle with. They don't do well against the 76ers, and the 76ers are clawing their way up the ladder. But that's a team they struggle with. They've struggled with the Cavs a little bit, but they've beaten the Nets, beaten the Wizards, beaten the Hornets.
They've struggled against Miami.
Miami, and I don't think they've played Milwaukee yet, have they?
No, they haven't yet.
So we'll see how they do there. But I think it's a battle of matchups with them, and that's going to sort of seal how they go. But they've played the Nets pretty well.
Yes, they have. They've played New York really well. They've played the Knicks well. They played. I mean, I know the Knicks are kind of, but the Nets are obviously one of the better teams in the NBA. They're on top of the Eastern Conference. So, I mean, they went shorthanded on the road and beat them at the Barclays Center. That was really an impressive win.
Yeah. The Bucks have really climbed their way back up this too.
Which you knew they would.
Yeah, you knew they would. They're a team that's completely capable of going on a long winning streak. But it's nice to see the Bulls. We're like what, 40% through the season
ish,
and the Bulls are sitting at a fantastic record here, 19-10,
and DeMar DeRozan keeps killing it.
Oh, absolutely, he's a beast.
He's got 24 points currently, and he had 38 when he came back.
Yep.
Remember when people said that this was going to be a bad signing, that it wouldn't fit for the Bulls?
I just want to save those clippings type things where, like, when they said that about DeMar, or the guy who said that Justin Fields is already a bust. Like, I want to save these articles to just throw it in their dumb faces.
Sean has a giant binder under his bed where he just prints it out, cuts it out, and pastes it in this binder. It's just this big, huge binder where, like, the papers are like halfway showing out. You open this thing, you got all these clippings, and you just look every day like, all right, what are we gonna laugh at now?
Yeah, it's it just, the binder says people that chat my ass.
It's like written in Sharpie on the front.
But yeah, I mean, those people like that drive me crazy. It's like, listen, like, I get that it's a pretty crowded space of people doing sports writing, and you're trying to differentiate yourself. But to write dumb shit to be a troll, like, I don't get, because there's, with the internet, it's easy to pull these things up forever. Like when Justin Fields is a perennial Pro Bowl level quarterback, and like, this guy is never going to be able to live his comment down that Justin Fields was a bad player. Just like the guy that said, or, all the people that said that DeMar DeRozan was a bad signing. And I forgot who was it said that DeMar DeRozan was the worst signing of the free agency period.
Was it Stephen A?
I don't think it, I mean, I think he was down on it, but there was somebody that was just like, said that was the worst. And I'd have to look at who it was, but that's hard to live down, because people have the video clip of you saying it. They have the article that you wrote. Like, they know you said this. Like, that's a big matzo ball to put out there. It just seems silly, because there's a good chance that you have to be able to go back and eat that crow.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, so the Bulls got a nice, a nice schedule for the rest of this week. They get the back-to-back with the Hawks, And then Friday they got the Pacers again, and then Saturday the Wizards. So it's some nice winnable games, and some nice winnable games. And I think they're it's not an easy path, but it is it's a good build up for coming back with your guys healthy. They should be some nice wins that you can sort of hang your hat on.
Yeah. And, you just want to keep going, even though you're not at full strength. And, Alex Caruso, having him injured really, really sucks. But you're just going to have to play next man up like you've been doing this whole year.
Yeah, the Caruso injury sucks. I forgot to even mention that.
That's a tough one.
Yeah. Did they give a timetable for him coming back?
I think they're going to evaluate a few weeks. So it's not going to be like this week. He's going to be coming back.
Yeah, because that foot sprain, that could be a day-to-day, or that could be a lingering issue.
Right.
And I messaged my contact, and they didn't have any more details when I asked the other day.
See Red Fred?
No, I have a contact that works as with the Chicago Bulls, with the actual players.
Oh, how neat.
Yeah, I could tell you off the air. Well, not tell you on the air.
Okay.
But
is it Mike Murphy's secret caller that's actually him using his wife's email address?
No, it's actually somebody that travels with the Bulls on the actual Bulls plane.
Okay. All right. Then fair enough.
Yeah. Blackhawks, there's just nothing.
No, they haven't been playing.
They haven't been playing. Like the league is going to post or lengthen a couple more days the COVID pause, because it's still bad.
Yeah.
I think the NHL is making the right decision.
Well, I mean, it's rampant everywhere, and it's just going to cause more problems down the road.
But I mean, it gives us an opportunity here to talk a little more high level Blackhawks rather than individual. And I don't know who's going to be the long-term GM of the Blackhawks. But I think they're going to have their work cut out for them.
Yeah, they are. They are.
In a couple of years, things could sort of work themselves out as far as their cap type hits go. But, right now they're up against the cap as it is. And, you're going to have to make a decision on Kirby Dach at some point. And has he been good enough to sign him to a big contract? Probably not.
No, and I'm a pretty big fan of his too, but let's be real here.
Yeah, it's not a knock. It's just saying is he's not shown enough to commit big money to him. You've got guys with expiring contracts. You've got Ryan Carpenter, Marc-Andre Fleury, Calvin DeHaan, Eric Gustafson, Caleb Jones, Dominique Kubalik, Kevin Lankinen, Dylan Strome, that you all have to make decisions on of what you're doing there. And you've got after this year, I think you've got one more year of Alex DeBrincat, and you have to make a decision on him. He's a very good player, but how much money do you commit to him?
That's a guy you got to keep around, in my opinion. You got to keep him.
But at what cost?
Well, I mean, how much money is going to be coming off the book within the next few years? Kane and Tays are somewhat coming to the end, I believe, of their big deals.
Yeah, I think next year is the last year, but it's, um, do you give like $10 million contract to Alex DeBrincat?
I mean, if you can avoid it, you'd want to. It's a lot of money. What he's going to command is going to be very interesting. I mean, this is just one part of the equation. If you want to know what worries me, I don't think their player development has been all that through the farm really has been all that strong.
No, it has not, especially now that you own your minor league franchise. Like you should be able to have better player development. You've got guys that you're like, oh, I'm pretty excited about this guy. And then they never get any further along.
Especially the defensemen. We've had a number of defensive prospects, whether it's Adam Boqvist, Ian Mitchell, and they've just fizzled out. And yeah, you've had a few nice little surprises here or there. Brandon Hagel's been a nice depth guy, but at most you're getting depth guys. When are they going to develop some real impact players? And I know it's not quite like baseball, but there's still something to be said about developing talent within your farm system in hockey.
Right. And right now you're stuck with, so basically all your big money comes off the books for the most part, not this year, but after next season, when DeBrincat comes off, Kane comes off, Taves comes off, Brett Connolly comes off. And then basically you're left with your, essentially the new Keith Seabrook contracts of Seth Jones and Connor Murphy.
That Seth Jones contract is freaking Stan Bowman, man.
Like I don't hate him on the team.
No, not at all.
But
the contract is albatross.
That is a big contract for a long time.
If it was half the years and half the AAV, fine. But that extension was ridiculous.
Yeah, it's Connor Murphy is at almost 4 million. I'm sorry, it's 3.85 this year, and then it's 4.4 for the rest of the years through the 25-26 season. And then Seth Jones right now is 5.4 this year, but it balloons to 9.5 through the 2029-2030 years. The salary cap is not going up that much.
Seriously, Stan Bowman, what the hell was this guy thinking?
I have no idea. So really, you have some money to work with, but you also have like half the team you have to sign, including 2 goalies.
Yeah, hopefully for the Hawks, you like seeing them play a bit more competitive ball, but I wouldn't mind a high draft pick either.
My thing is, why not just hit the reset button, the hard reset button? And the thing is the Seth Jones contract really just prevents you from hitting that hard reset.
Yeah, because Stan Bowman refused to do that. I mean, he kind of set that up himself. When you give big contracts with no trade clauses, it's really hard to move on from that. Yeah. Really hard.
Yeah, because come at the end of the season, when you're already a team that's not that good, and you have about $22 million in cap space, and you've got to fill like half your roster, including 2 goalies.
Right. It's not like you're 1 or 2 pieces away. You are a lot of pieces away, and I don't see any scenario how this team becomes a cup contender anytime soon.
No. Maybe. Yeah, I mean, and the thing is like honestly, like what do you do with Jonathan Taves? And what do you do with Patrick Kane? Patrick Kane can still play, but Jonathan Taves is like, what kind of contract are you willing to give him? Are you willing to give him another contract?
I don't know if you do. I mean, you got to keep this in mind too. He's had physical problems as well. I think his prime days are through.
Patrick Kane still playing at a high level. You could bring him back. But
yeah,
do you?
I mean, yeah.
And if you're not going to bring him back, why don't you try to trade him? I know he's got no movement clause, but if you go to him like, listen, this is, we love you and we hope you are in the Hall of Fame, Blackhawks sweater, but we're not a good team. We need to rebuild. I don't know if you want to be part of a rebuild organization.
Yeah, I feel like there might have to be that attempt. I've said this for a while now, that you might have to bite the bullet and try to get him to move. Obviously, he's got the no trade clause, but I'm with you. I think a hard reset might be what's necessary here. It was probably been necessary for a while.
Yeah, the way you set up your Seth Jones and Connor Murphy contracts, you're sort of, can you do a full reset? I don't know if you can. I think you're stuck. I mean, that's a big reason I'm just glad Stan is gone, because
it was a big first step. Unfortunately, whoever's inheriting this is inheriting a big mess.
Yes, it's a big mess, but somebody else needs to clean it up. Stan can't clean up his own mess.
Nope. And that's why the Blackhawks, I think, are trying to get creative here with who they're going to hire. I mean, they've been picking the brains of other sports executives, including Jed Hoyer. I don't know if you heard that, just kind of putting how to put an infrastructure into place. So, they're obviously taking their time and really evaluating hard on who this next person is going to be. And it tells me right then and there that this interim guy is probably not going to be it. Maybe he's part of the front office going forward, but I feel like they're willing to think outside of the box and really do some research and thinking on who they're going to hire next, and not pull a Stan Bowman and just say, oh, Jeremy Colleton, you were mediocre as the interim coach. Okay, here's an extension.
Yeah, that's, it's going to be interesting to see how they handle this, because Kyle Davidson is the current interim general manager. And I don't know if they make him permanent or not. I would be shocked if they don't retain him either way.
Yeah, they can retain him. I just don't think he's going to be the next head honcho.
And, do they make him the GM, but then hire somebody above him and replace the position that Stan had?
Like a president of hockey operations.
Yes.
Yeah, I could see that.
Is that something they do, or they, it's, Kyle Davidson's been with the team for like I think a decade or so. So he's highly regarded, and, he seems like he's been in multiple roles with the Blackhawks over those years. Seems like he's a smart guy, and you probably don't want to lose a guy like that, but you also don't want to hamstring yourself with,
give yourself the opportunity to bring in something new.
Right. It's going to be curious what they do as far as the head coach, though. Are they going to go the route of a veteran recycled head coach? Because they'll have a lot of choices, but I wonder if the route that they tried to take with Jeremy Colleton was the right route, where they just swung and missed on the wrong guy, where they got a young guy that's up and coming that they can grow around rather than somebody that's been around the block 12 times.
Well, that's a good question because, I mean, think about it. If you're going to bring in a highly touted veteran, don't you think they'd more want to come into a situation where it's built to win now?
Probably. I mean, there's going to be guys that'll find coming in and trying to rebuild this whole organization that's kind of because if you can, I mean, it's clear that if you can win with the Blackhawks, you're set for life. Is this town loves you.
Yeah, I think of guys like Claude Julien, and I don't know if they'd come to a situation like this, but I don't know. Again, I don't know for sure.
You know what I mean? They wouldn't want to come to a team that has salary cap issues and no goalies after this season.
Yeah, right.
Was there anything else you wanted to talk about?
Nah, we're still in a lockout. Nothing new on that.
Yeah. And
the only thing I'll say, I'm just going to make this point really quick. Those Carlos Correa Cubs rumors are not going away.
They are not going away. And I'm not hearing any Yankee rumors.
No, I feel like if there's a team that would take him away from the Cubs, it would probably be LA because they lost Corey Seager and LA never limits what they do.
Yeah, but did you see how much money they just had to spend in the luxury tax? Like
do they care?
I mean, when it comes down to start losing international pool money and other penalties that could be coming from the after the lockout, that might limit them. I mean, we don't know what the outcome of the lockout's going to be with this new collective bargaining agreement.
That's true. We don't know. That's very true.
I mean, what if they put much stricter penalties in for competitive balance?
They could
losing draft picks, higher luxury tax payments, etc. I think the draft pick probably would be a bigger detriment to them than the money because they're flush with money, but the draft picks is kind of what kept them afloat because they do have such a strong pipeline.
Yeah, no, I mean, those are good points.
But I do like the fact that there's not a lot of Yankee rumors. I just don't know how long I want to lock up. I don't want to see the Cubs sign anybody to a 10-year deal.
Yeah, well, I mean, they seem to be bullish on 10-year deals themselves. I don't think they want to do it either.
But there's one thing we've been going long. Let's set the table for this, and we'll discuss it next episode.
All right.
I saw somebody compare stats of Kyle Schwarber and Nick Castellanos and make the argument that Kyle Schwarber would be the better free agent signing. So I would like to put that up for discussion on next episode.
All right. Sounds good.
But that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Chicago. I want to thank everybody so much for listening. Please hit subscribe however you listen to podcasts, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, Spotify, etc. Share this podcast with your friends. That's how we grow the show. Follow us on social media at Swerski Sports, Facebook.com/Swerski Sports, SwerskiSports.com, or follow Alex at AlexanderJPatCreative.com for all of the awesome things that Alex does. And again, thank you guys so much for listening. And until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like number New Yorkers. Smoking crack is not legal on planes.
Bears 31 to -7.
The Bears. Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.